If you get too close to something that looks like a human, but you don't quite match what it is, then it suddenly becomes really creepy. So people will like the thing the more lifelike that it gets. And then once it gets too close, like the likability of it drops. It's
Mm.
like zombies or something that's human but not quite human really creeps us out. And then it doesn't go back up again until you can perfectly, like absolutely perfectly mimic a human. And I think I like to think about it more less in terms of the uncanny valley and more in terms of expectation management, I guess. So I think that if we see something that looks human, we expect it to act like a human. And if it's not quite up to that standard, I think it disappoints what we were expecting from it. And that's why we don't like it. And that's a principle that I see in robot design a lot. So a lot of the really, I think, compelling social robots that we develop nowadays are not designed to look like something that you're intimately familiar with. Like I have this robot cat at home that Hasbro makes, and it's the creepiest thing. It like because it's clearly not a real cat, even though it tries to look like one.
Mm.
And so it's very unlovable in a way. But I also have this baby dinosaur robot that is much more compelling because I've never actually interacted with a 2-week-old Camarasaurus before. So it's much easier to suspend my disbelief and actually imagine that this is how a dinosaur would behave.
Right.
So yeah, so it's interesting to see how, you know, the whole Westworld concept, before we could even get there, we would really need to have robots that are so similar to humans that we wouldn't really be able to tell the difference.
What is the state of the art in terms of humanoid robots at this point? I mean, I've never actually been in the presence of any advanced robot technology that's attempting to be humanoid.
There are some Japanese androids that are pretty interesting. I don't think like to me they're not out of the uncanny valley yet, but there's also some conversation about whether the uncanny valley is cultural or not, and also I think some research on that which I don't think is very conclusive, but it might be that in some cultures, like in Japanese culture, people are more accepting of robots uh that look like humans but aren't quite there because people say that there's this religious background to it, that the Shinto religion, the belief that objects can have souls makes people
Mm.
more accepting of robotic technology in general, whereas in Western society we're more creeped out by this idea that a thing, a machine could, resemble a living thing in a way. But I'm not really sure. And I mean, you should check out the androids that Ishiguro in Japan is making because they're pretty cool. He made one that looks like himself, which is interesting to think about, his own motivations and psychology behind that. But it is a pretty cool robot. I think, just from a photograph, you might not be able to tell the difference. Probably in interacting with it, you would.
So, do you think we will get to a Westworld level lifelikeness long before we get to the AI necessary to power those kinds of robots? Or do you have any intuitions about how long it will take to climb out of the uncanny valley?
That's a good question. I honestly I'm not as interested in, how do we completely replicate humans because I see so many interesting design things happening now where that's not necessary. Like
Hmm.
we can already with and robotic technology is very primitive at this point. I mean, robots can barely operate a fork, but we can create characters that people will treat as though they're alive. And while it's not quite Westworld level, if we move away from this idea that we have to create humanoid robots and we create, a blob or, we have a century of animation expertise to draw on in creating these compelling characters that people can relate to and that move in a really expressive way. And I think that that's, much more interesting. I think much sooner than Westworld, we can get to a place where we are creating robots that people will consistently treat like living things, even if we know that they're machines.